So I finally found some time to sink into No Rest for the Wicked, the new game from Moon Studios, who worked on one of my favourite game series, Ori and the Blind Forest, and the sequel, Will of the Wisps. This time round, they are diving into the ARPG world to try and make something fresh and hopefully evolve the genre. And I'm here to talk about my time after receiving a code from the developers, so a massive shout out to them for a code. It's much appreciated. No Rest for the Wicked is best described as an isometric Souls-like, with elements from ARPGs such as Diablo with the build crafting elements and also elements of crafting games. Together, it makes for a unique blend of gameplay, but is it actually any good? My first initial thoughts on No Rest for the Wicked is that it needs some work in certain areas. It has a lot of good, but they need to fix a lot of things and maybe alter and change stuff over the course of early access. And the developers seem to be within the same boat because they've released 5 hotfixes in the space of a week since the game launched to update various things such as balancing, performance, bug fixes, changes to things in the game already. I don't know how these guys are getting sleep with how much they have updated the game. It's currently sitting at a 74% as of recording on the Steam store, and it has gone up from a 50% on launch, from being mixed all the way up to mostly positive. So they are on the right track. The problem with making a video like this is that in a month's time, all of these gripes that I have with it could be fixed, or they have planned patches that are coming out that fix a lot of the issues within the game. So this is mainly my rough impressions after 11 hours or so as of recording playing the game. I experienced a lot of things in the game, all of the things that I had to do, all of the different bosses and the quests, the different systems within the game that I felt like I needed to experience. I haven't dived too much into the end game just yet, but I plan on doing so after finishing this video. I want to experience more of this game, but I fear if I don't make this video now, I never will. So this is more of a general impressions and not really a full-fledged review. So let's talk about the game, starting with the good. Combat is by far my favorite aspect of this game. It's weighty with various weapons offering different playstyles that do feel distinctly different. There's claymores, there's little hammer things, there's staffs that you can use, bow and arrows, daggers. There's a lot of variety here that I haven't fully checked out with all of them. I kind of went with a claymore strength setup in the beginning and then ended with a flaming hammer and shield build thing, which was awesome. I felt like Thor the entire time as I was playing. Each weapon has unique animations and combo strings that you can learn alongside the focus bar, which the focus bar allows you to do these special moves, and it kind of works like a mana bar as well. And then when you do attacks, you build this up and then you're able to use it to, i.e., throw out a hammer or do a big sweeping swipe with your claymore. There's a lot of really cool stuff here, and I want to try out obviously more of these weapons to see what unique things that you can do with it. The 3 key parts of combat are here as normal though: parrying, dodging, and counter-attacking. I learned to parry after a few hours of being stomped using the claymore, and it opened up the game a hell of a lot more. And apparently I think enemies take more damage, at least it seems, after you've parried them, and it seems a lot different to other like Souls type games that I've played previously. I also really enjoyed the boss fights in the game, one of which is like right at the start, and that was a nice like introductory boss fight which opens up the big city. I've not seen the final boss that's in like the end game area, so I'll have to play a little bit more to do that. But I do want to spend more time looking into the enchantment system within the gear, trying out different weapons and build the selections to be able to see what this game has to offer, because apparently on full launch the game has over 200 weapons and variations and stuff, so sign me up for checking that stuff out. Moon Studios have a really good grasp of world design and art design, at least for me, because this game literally looks like you're stepping into a watercolor painting. All of the sound design is really nice and crispy as well, and I really enjoyed exploring the world, very much the same as Ori in their previous outing. As you are exploring, it doesn't always clearly show where you need to go, similar to other Souls games, so you do have to pay attention to the environment a lot more, and some subtle like dialogue cues that give you kind of ideas and to figure out where you need to go. And the only downside is that sometimes some of the deaths that you get in the game from fall damage are because you are trying to reach areas that you may not be able to. But there was one really cool area in like the later portion, like the Nameless Pass, where I climbed all the way up and I saw a ledge that was like, okay, if I can drop down to this and not take too much damage, I can get to this key that I need. And it did actually lead to me getting something that I could use to progress an area and get a new item and stuff. So I like that. I appreciate that the inbuilt thing that allows for the player to be curious when exploring. The game does have a lot of systems though, the town building element, player housing, an interesting endgame mode, and some pretty interesting gear and loot stuff. But I think I need to talk about the two core problems I have with the game currently, and hopefully I can explain why I don't think these are too good. They're not necessarily bad, but I think they cause a lot of frustration, at least for me. The first of these is how the game approaches progression. The only way to understand how an area will kick your ass is in the top right of the screen, which will be deadly, dangerous, moderate, or safe. That's the only real indicator that you get that an area is going to be pretty tough, and you will find out because once you get to that area, the Nameless Pass, you will get your ass kicked. The only way that you get stronger is that you need to go back to previous areas such as the Shallows or the Mariner's Keep to go and farm out some enemies and find some of the gear that's there in order to get more of it. The game resets on a daily timer that is in game, and when you go back to these areas, all the chests will reset, all the loot in the area will reset as well. But even then, it can still feel like you have hit a wall, purely because when you beat the first boss in the game, you get to see Sacrament, and then once you go into Sacrament and start the next quest line, you'll get sent to the Nameless Pass, which is an area that will absolutely kick your ass. Until you have some understanding of how gear progresses in the game and spend that time backtracking to go and get more resources, it never really feels like you're technically moving forward. You're doing a lot of backtracking to move forward, which at least for me felt like I was stuck until I'd made like a meaningful progression with either my gear or I grinded out a bunch of enemies to get some more XP to give me some more damage on like strength or dexterity or whatever I was using at the time. The backtracking portion of the game could be alleviated with the Wisps system in the game, which essentially acts as your respawn point whenever you die. But sadly, you can only fast travel between one Whisper and Sacrament, which means that all of the other ones that you've unlocked, you can't go to somewhere quickly if you want to go and farm out some enemies, purely because you can only go between one or the other. So it means you have to do even more time backtracking. It does sometimes help because there's going to be enemies along the way, but if there's a certain area that you need to go to, which also then plays into one of the other biggest issues in the game, which is healing items, and you'll need to get a lot of these, so fast traveling to areas that have a lot of resources is key. This leads us to our second biggest issue in the game, at least in the early portion, which is healing items and item management. Upon reaching the Whispers, they aren't typically like bonfires. They are literally just a respawn point. They don't heal you, so if you go into a new area, you just die and then you'll be respawned there with full health. It's not as punishing, say you're losing souls and stuff, but you do lose durability, which also means you need to spend resources to repair your gear. I would 100% love for them to make this interaction heal your character, because it would alleviate a lot of the pain that you can come into with healing items, because the healing items in the game aren't your typical flasks or items that you use. They are literally consumables that you make at fires. You gather the resources to be able to make these meals, and that is going to be your healing items. You can upgrade cooks and stuff in the game to get better recipes, but the problem that you have is you need the ingredients, which also take up space in your inventory, and they are in the same slot as key items to level up your gear, which means that you have to make a choice between getting healing items or key items for upgrades from chests or enemy drops, and this can mean that you are deleting things and filling up your inventory rather quickly. The issue is when you get into an area that is stomping you, you will go through your healing items so fast it's unbelievable. So it feels like you're being punished as a player every time you try to take a meaningful step forward, because then you need to go back and farm all the resources again to make more items and rinse repeat. It can feel like a little bit of a grindy loop. It's only till I got healing regeneration on some gear pieces that I enchanted that I started to feel a lot better. And some city upgrades also help with being able to buy upgrades and stuff as well, or buy the items that you need. But this was after a good 9 hours worth of play, so it can lead to a lot of frustration and it can feel quite rough and grindy. So I'd love to see some improvements here, which they've already started to make in the most recent hotfix. Lastly, performance is a big issue, but which they're already addressing and have done in all of the hotfixes. And it's not 100% yet. There are hitches and frame drops at time, but it runs pretty well for the most part. I do think it still needs a lot of work. Plus your typical jank in early access, like models not having textures pop up at the first time you go into an area, or things not picking up correctly, which can be frustrating, but these bugs will get ironed out. And you also have an issue where you can run into an invisible game world, which I did. So basically things aren't loading in correctly. And I do think that they need to work on the load times in general with the game, because sometimes you're waiting a minute to either load the game up, if not more, or between fast travels. And I would like to see this reduced considerably. No Rest for the Wicked is a good base for an early access game. As I've stated, I need to play more and analyze more of the systems and get into the end game and build crafting, and I'm incredibly curious to see what updates come next and what the next big huge update is. I've had a lot of fun with it. I really enjoy the combat. It can be quite addictive once you get past this early portion of the grind and get to the end game, because then you have more access to resources and you can start messing around with the enchantment system and stuff like that. And also player housing. I want to mess around with that too and haven't just yet. So I've still got a lot to explore. But let me know what you think of the game. Are you thinking about checking this out? Are you going to wait until it's a full launch? Have you played it already? I'd love to know in the comment section down below. And if you've enjoyed this video, leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content from me. And as always, this has been Jimbo. I'll see you guys next time.